Every knight failed to save the alien princess, until a human mechanic used WD-40. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The grease under Tyler Grant's fingernails had been there so long he'd stopped noticing it. He stood in the cargo bay of the Galactic Coalition Station Meridian 7, wiping his hands on a rag that was somehow dirtier than his skin, watching nobles in shimmering armor stride past like he didn't exist. And to them, he probably didn't. The call went out 3 cycles ago. Princess Alira of the Valerian Empire had been locked inside the Celestial Vault, an ancient prison designed by the long-dead architects, a race so advanced that even their failures could humble modern civilizations. The lock was impossible, unbreakable. 43 champions had tried. 43 had returned in shame, their weapons bent, their pride shattered, their ships silent as they slunk back through the station. Tyler didn't care much about princesses or empires. He cared about keeping the station's waste recyclers from backing up and making life miserable for everyone on board. But when the Coalition administrator, a towering Draxian named Cormac, appeared in the maintenance bay with an expression somewhere between desperation and disgust, Tyler knew his quiet life was about to get complicated. Cormac's scales gleamed under the harsh maintenance lights, his triple-jointed arms crossed in what Tyler had learned was a gesture of reluctant authority. The Draxian wore the formal robes of his office, deep purple with silver threading that caught the light when he moved. His eyes, however, were tired. 3 of them, anyway. The 4th was cybernetic and glowed with a faint amber pulse. So Tyler said, "If you're here to tell me the waste system's acting up again, I already know. I'm on it." Cormac's mandibles clicked, a sound that could mean anything from amusement to irritation. "The waste system is functioning adequately, Mechanic Grant. I come on a matter of far greater importance." Tyler tossed the rag onto his workbench, which was really just a repurposed cargo container he'd bolted to the wall. Greater importance than preventing a sewage flood that'll shut down 3 decks? Must be pretty serious. The administrator's eyes narrowed, all 4 of them. The Valerian princess remains imprisoned. The Empire grows impatient. If she is not freed within 2 cycles, they will consider it an act of negligence by the Coalition. This station will be held responsible. Tyler picked up a Hydra wrench, examined it, then set it down. "And you're telling me this because?" Cormac's scales rippled, a sign of deep discomfort. "Because every champion, every hero, every warrior of renown has failed. The lock defies all conventional methods. It does not respond to energy, brute force, or advanced technology. The High Council has suggested that perhaps an unconventional approach is required." Tyler raised an eyebrow. "Unconventional? You mean someone who doesn't know what they're doing?" The Draxian's mandibles clicked again. "I mean someone who thinks differently. Humans are known for their peculiar problem-solving methods. Crude, perhaps, but occasionally effective." Tyler leaned against the workbench, crossing his arms. "Let me get this straight. You've had 43 of the galaxy's best warriors try to open a door, and now you want the maintenance guy to take a crack at it, because we're too dumb to know it's impossible." Cormac's scales flushed a deeper purple. "That is not how I would phrase it, but the essence is accurate. Will you attempt it or not?" Tyler thought about it. He thought about the hours he'd spent fixing things everyone else said were unfixable. He thought about the Valerian Empire and what they might do to a Coalition station if their princess died in a box. He thought about the fact that he'd probably say no if Cormac hadn't looked so desperate. Then Tyler said, "Fine, but I'm bringing my tools." The Celestial Vault sat in the center of the station's diplomatic hall, a massive chamber designed to host important meetings and ceremonies. Now it hosted only failure. The vault itself was beautiful in the way ancient things often are, all smooth surfaces and geometric patterns that seemed to shift when you looked at them too long. It was roughly cube-shaped, each side measuring about 3 meters, made of a material that reflected light without being reflective, if that made any sense. Which it didn't. Around the vault stood the evidence of previous attempts. Scorched floor tiles where plasma cutters had been used. Cracked walls where battering rams had recoiled. Scattered fragments of exotic metals where supposedly indestructible weapons had shattered against the vault's surface. And everywhere, the smell of ozone and defeat. Tyler walked around the vault slowly, his tool bag slung over his shoulder. Behind him, Cormac waited with barely concealed impatience. Behind Cormac, a small crowd had gathered. Word had spread that the human mechanic was going to try his luck, and apparently the entire station had decided this was worth watching. Tyler could see them whispering, making wagers, probably betting on how quickly he'd fail. He knelt beside the vault, running his hand along one edge. The surface was cool, almost cold, and perfectly smooth except for a single seam that ran along what he assumed was the door. No handle, no keyhole, no visible mechanism of any kind. Just a seam and a surface that had already humbled the galaxy's best. Tyler sat back on his heels and said, "Has anyone tried asking it nicely?" Someone in the crowd laughed. Cormac's scales rippled. "This is not a time for humor, Mechanic Grant." Tyler shrugged. Wasn't joking. Sometimes the simplest solution is the right one. He placed his palm flat against the vault and said clearly, "Hey, vault, open up." Nothing happened. Tyler nodded. Worth a shot. He pulled his tool bag around and started laying out his equipment. Standard stuff, mostly. Wrenches, screwdrivers, a portable scanner that was older than he was, some wire, electrical tape, and wedged in the bottom, a blue and yellow can that had traveled with him across 3-star systems. One of the observers, a Keltharian knight in ceremonial battle armor, stepped forward. His name was Vex, and Tyler had fixed his ship's landing gear 2 weeks ago. The knight's carapace gleamed silver, and his 4 arms each held a different weapon. He was considered one of the finest warriors in the sector. Vex said, "Mechanic, I mean no disrespect, but I attempted to breach this vault with a molecular disruptor blade forged in the core of a dying star. The blade shattered. What do you hope to accomplish with hand tools?" Tyler looked up from his bag. "Well, Vex, I'm hoping the vault wasn't designed to defend against a guy with a wrench. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor." Another observer, a silicate scholar named Crystalline 7, floated closer. Her body was composed of living crystal that refracted light into rainbow patterns. She spoke with a voice like wind chimes. The architects were masters of defensive engineering. Their locks respond to specific energy signatures, quantum frequencies, or dimensional keys. Without the proper credentials, the vault is theoretically impossible to open. Tyler pulled out his scanner and began running it along the seam. Theoretically is my favorite word. It means someone's making assumptions. The scanner beeped, showing him exactly nothing useful. No power signature. No frequency to match. The vault was just there, existing, refusing to cooperate. He sat back and stared at it. The crowd was getting restless. He could hear the murmurs, the disappointment already settling in. They'd expected a miracle, or at least entertainment. Instead, they were getting a guy sitting on the floor, looking confused. Tyler's mind wandered to other impossible problems he'd solved. The time the water filtration system on the transport ship Wanderer had failed, and he jury-rigged a solution using coffee filters and positive thinking. The time a cargo door had rusted shut on Outpost 12, and he'd spent 6 hours with penetrating oil and a prayer. The time he'd fixed a broken environmental seal, using chewing gum and the insulation from a spare wire. Wait. Tyler looked at the seam again. Really looked at it. Then he started laughing. Cormac's voice was sharp. "What is amusing, Mechanic Grant?" Tyler stood up, brushing dust off his knees. "I need to check something. Is there any documentation on how long this vault has been here?" Crystalline 7's voice chimed. According to station records, the vault was discovered on a derelict architect vessel approximately 4,000 cycles ago. It has been in Coalition custody since then, studied extensively, but never opened. Tyler nodded slowly. 4,000 cycles. And in all that time, has anyone tried basic maintenance? The silence that followed was profound. Vex's mandibles worked soundlessly. Maintenance. Tyler knelt again, this time pulling out a small light and shining it along the seam. "See this? This isn't an energy lock or a quantum seal. This is corrosion. The seam's oxidized. The door's stuck because it's rusted shut." The crowd erupted in protests. Crystalline 7 floated closer, her body pulsing with agitation. "Impossible. Architect materials do not corrode. They are immune to entropy." Tyler tapped the seam with his knuckle. "Well, either the architects weren't as perfect as everyone thinks, or this vault's been sitting in atmospheres it wasn't designed for. Either way, I've seen this exact problem 100 times. Different scale, same solution. He reached into his bag and pulled out the blue and yellow can. The label was faded, written in Old Earth Standard, but the words were still legible. WD-40, water displacement, 40th formula. The same stuff mechanics had been using for centuries to free stuck bolts, silence squeaky hinges, and generally make the universe cooperate. Cormac stared at the can. What is that? Tyler shook it, hearing the familiar rattle of the mixing ball inside. This is a penetrating lubricant. We've been using it on Earth since before we even left our own planet. Works on everything. Vex weapons lowered slightly. You intend to defeat an architect lock with a chemical spray? Tyler aimed the nozzle at the seam. I intend to unstick a stuck door with the best unsticker humanity ever invented. Stand back. This stuff smells terrible. He pressed the nozzle, and the distinctive hiss of WD-40 filled the diplomatic hall. The thin red tube directed the spray directly into the seam, and Tyler worked his way around the entire perimeter of the door, coating every millimeter of the oxidized joint. The smell hit immediately, that particular petroleum-based odor that every mechanic in human space knew by heart. The aliens recoiled. Crystalline 7's surface clouded. What is that odor? Tyler kept spraying. That's the smell of human ingenuity, or human stubbornness. Sometimes they're the same thing. When he'd covered the entire seam, he set the can down and waited. This was the part that required patience, something he'd learned the hard way. You couldn't rush penetrating oil. It needed time to work its way into the microscopic gaps, to break down the bonds of oxidation, to convince metal that it wanted to move again. The crowd waited with him, though they didn't know what they were waiting for. Tyler could see the skepticism on every face, in every gesture. They thought he was insane. They thought he'd wasted their time with a can of lubricant when the galaxy's finest warriors had failed with weapons of legend. After 5 minutes, Tyler stood and brushed off his knees again. He walked up to the vault, placed both hands flat against the surface, and pushed. Nothing happened. Someone in the crowd laughed. Tyler didn't turn around. He shifted his grip, braced his feet, and pushed again. Still nothing. He could feel the weight of their disappointment, the confirmation of their low expectations. Then he pulled instead of pushed. The vault door moved. It wasn't dramatic. There was no burst of light, no fanfare of energy, no mystical chiming of ancient mechanisms. The door simply slid open with a faint grinding sound, like any old door that hadn't been used in a while. The smell of stale air wafted out, for 1,000 cycles old, carrying with it the faint scent of ozone and something floral. The diplomatic hall fell silent. Tyler peered inside. The vault's interior was smaller than he'd expected, barely large enough to stand in. And there, sitting on what appeared to be a simple bench, was Princess Alira. She was beautiful in the way that alien royalty often were, which is to say she was beautiful in a way that made Tyler's brain work hard to categorize what he was seeing. Her skin had a faint luminescence, shifting between blue and silver. Her eyes were large and golden, with vertical pupils that contracted in the sudden light. She wore robes that seemed to be made of starlight, or at least something that moved like light and felt like fabric. Her hair floated around her head as if suspended in water, deep purple and shot through with threads of white. She stood slowly, blinking at Tyler with an expression of profound confusion. When she spoke, her voice was melodic but carried an edge of disbelief. You opened it. Tyler nodded. Yeah. Door was stuck. Princess Alira stepped out of the vault carefully, as if unsure the floor would hold her. She looked at the crowd, at the damaged walls, at the scattered remains of failed attempts. Then she looked back at Tyler. 43 champions attempted my rescue. 43 heroes with legendary weapons and ancient techniques. They all failed. Tyler picked up his can of WD-40 and tossed it in his hand. They were probably overthinking it. The princess's eyes fixed on the can. And that is... Cormac stepped forward, his scales now rippling with what might have been relief or embarrassment. Tyler couldn't tell. Your Highness, this is Tyler Grant, a human maintenance technician. He opened the vault with a chemical lubricant. Princess Alira's expression shifted through several emotions Tyler couldn't identify before settling on something that might have been amusement. A maintenance technician, with a chemical lubricant. Tyler shrugged. The door was rusted. I unstuck it. That's kind of my job. The princess began to laugh. It started as a soft chuckle and grew into genuine mirth that echoed through the diplomatic hall. The sound was infectious, and soon Tyler found himself grinning despite the surreal situation. Here he was, covered in grease, holding a can of WD-40, while an alien princess laughed at the absurdity of her rescue. When she finally composed herself, Princess Alira wiped at her eyes, which apparently worked the same as human eyes in at least that one respect. She said, "I have been in that vault for 3 cycles. 3 cycles of listening to warriors proclaim their intent to save me with force and glory. 3 cycles of hearing metal shatter and energy weapons fail. And in the end, I am freed by a human with a spray can." Tyler nodded. To be fair, it's a really good spray can. The princess looked at him with those golden eyes, and Tyler saw something shift in her expression. Recognition, maybe, or respect. "What is your name, human?" He told her, and she repeated it slowly, as if committing it to memory. "Tyler Grant. I am Princess Alira of the Valerian Empire, 3rd daughter of Emperor Corvus, and I owe you a debt that cannot be easily repaid." Tyler waved a hand dismissively. "You don't owe me anything. I was just doing my job." But Princess Alira shook her head, and her floating hair swirled around her like a living thing. "Among my people, a life debt is sacred. You have freed me when all others failed. This cannot be dismissed with modesty." Cormac interjected, his voice carrying formal weight. "Your Highness, the Coalition is pleased to have facilitated your release. Perhaps we should contact your father and arrange for your transport home." The princess nodded, but her eyes never left Tyler. "Yes, of course. But first, I would like to understand something, Mechanic Tyler Grant. How did you know? How did you see what 43 champions could not?" Tyler thought about it. He looked at the vault, at the crowd of witnesses, at the can of WD-40 still in his hand. Then he said, "I guess I've spent so much time fixing broken things that I stopped seeing them as mysteries and started seeing them as problems. And problems usually have simple solutions. Everyone else was looking for something complicated because the architects were supposed to be advanced. But advanced doesn't mean perfect. Sometimes a door is just a door, and sometimes it just needs oil." Princess Alira smiled, and it transformed her face from merely beautiful to something that made Tyler's heart do an unexpected skip. "You possess wisdom, Mechanic Tyler Grant, a rare quality among those who claim greatness." The crowd began to disperse, murmuring among themselves. Tyler caught fragments of conversation, most of it centered on disbelief and embarrassment. Vex approached, his 4 arms hanging at his sides in what Tyler had learned was a gesture of respect among Caltharians. The knight said, "I trained for 300 cycles to master the art of combat. I wielded weapons that cost more than most ships, and I was defeated by oxidation." He paused, then added, "Thank you for the lesson in humility, Mechanic Grant." Tyler clasped Vex's primary hand. "Anytime. And hey, if your ship's landing gear acts up again, you know where to find me." As the hall emptied, Cormac approached with a data pad. "The Emperor is sending a royal transport to retrieve his daughter. They will arrive within 1 cycle. In the meantime, the princess requires quarters and protection." Princess Alira spoke before Tyler could respond. "I require no protection, Administrator. I am quite safe here. However, I would like to speak further with Mechanic Grant, if he is willing." Tyler glanced at his chronometer. "I've got to fix that waste recycler before 2nd shift, but I can spare an hour." The princess's smile widened. "Then an hour it shall be." They ended up in the station's observation lounge, a curved room with transparent walls that looked out into space. The view was spectacular, stars scattered across the darkness like spilled diamonds, the nearby nebula painting clouds of purple and blue across the void. Tyler had been here a few times during breaks, usually alone, usually eating a sandwich while he watched the universe turn. Princess Alira stood at the window, her luminescent skin reflecting in the transparent surface. She'd been silent for several minutes, just looking out at the stars. Tyler waited, comfortable with silence in a way that seemed to surprise most people. Finally, she spoke. "Do you know why I was placed in that vault?" Tyler shook his head, figured it was some kind of political thing. Royal families tend to have complicated problems. The princess turned to face him. "It was a test. My father believes that his children must prove their worth to rule. For my eldest brother, the test was conquest. For my sister, diplomacy. For me, he chose survival. I was to remain in the vault until freed by a champion worthy of my hand in marriage. Tyler blinked. That seems kind of extreme. Princess Alira's laugh was bitter. My father is an emperor. Extreme is his natural state. She moved away from the window, her robes flowing like liquid light. 43 champions. 43 fools seeking glory and a throne. Not one of them cared about me. They cared about what I represented. Tyler leaned against the wall. And what do you represent? She looked at him with those golden eyes. Power. Alliance. A stepping stone to ruling an empire. Her expression softened. But you did not free me for any of those reasons, did you? He shrugged. I freed you because Cormac asked me to try, and because leaving someone locked in a box seemed like a problem worth solving. Princess Alira moved closer. Exactly. You saw a problem, not an opportunity. A person, not a prize. She paused, then added quietly, You have no idea how rare that is. Tyler didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars. After a few minutes, the princess spoke again. Tell me about Earth. About your home. So Tyler told her. He talked about growing up in New Seattle, about learning to fix things from his father, about the way rain sounded on metal roofs, and how coffee tasted on cold mornings. He talked about leaving Earth to work on colony ships, about the stations and outposts where he'd spent the last 10 years of his life. He talked about the satisfaction of making something work that had given up, about the quiet pride in a job well done. Princess Alira listened without interrupting, and when he finished, she said, You speak of simple things with such reverence. Most beings I know speak only of grand achievements and legendary deeds. Tyler smiled. Grand achievements are great, but somebody's got to keep the toilets working. The princess laughed, genuine and bright. I like you, Tyler Grant. You are refreshingly honest. He felt his face warm. I'm really just a mechanic, Your Highness. She reached out and placed a hand on his arm. Her skin was warm, warmer than he'd expected. You are more than that, whether you realize it or not. Before Tyler could respond, an announcement chimed through the station's communication system. Cormac's voice echoed in the lounge. Attention, all station personnel. The Valerian Royal Transport has arrived early and is requesting immediate audience with Princess Alira. The princess's hand fell away from Tyler's arm. Her expression shifted, becoming more formal, more distant. The warmth that had been in her eyes cooled. It seems my time here is ending. Tyler pushed off from the wall. Better sooner than later, right? Get you home safe. But Princess Alira didn't move toward the door. Instead, she turned back to the window, her reflection ghostly in the transparent surface. Home. Yes. The words sounded hollow. Tyler watched her for a moment, then said, You don't sound excited. The princess's laugh was soft and sad. Excited to return to a court of vipers? To a father who locked me in a box as a test? To a life of political marriages and calculated alliances? She shook her head, her floating hair swirling. I am grateful to be free, Tyler. But I am not excited to return to a different kind of cage. Tyler didn't know what to say to that. He'd never dealt with royalty before, never had to navigate the complex emotional landscape of someone who had everything and nothing at the same time. So he just stood there, being present, being honest in the only way he knew how. After a long moment, Princess Alira turned to him. Will you accompany me to meet my father's envoy? I would appreciate a friendly face. Tyler nodded. Sure, but I should probably clean up first. I'm covered in grease. The princess smiled. You freed me covered in grease. I think it would be appropriate to introduce you the same way. The royal envoy was waiting in the diplomatic hall, which had been hastily cleaned since Tyler's successful vault opening. The scorched tiles had been replaced, the damaged walls repaired, and the scattered fragments of broken weapons removed. It looked almost dignified again. The envoy himself was a Valerian noble named Lord Arcturus, and he made Princess Alira look understated by comparison. His skin shimmered gold, his robes were woven with actual light strands, and he wore a crown that floated above his head without any visible support. His eyes were the same golden color as the princess's, but colder, more calculating. He bowed deeply when Princess Alira entered, But Tyler noticed the bow was more formal than affectionate. "Your Highness, the Emperor rejoices at your freedom and eagerly awaits your return." Princess Alira's voice was equally formal. "Lord Arcturus, I am pleased to be free. Allow me to introduce the one responsible for my release. This is Tyler Grant, a human mechanic stationed on Meridian 7. Lord Arcturus's gaze slid to Tyler, and the contempt was barely concealed. "A mechanic? How quaint." He turned back to the princess. "Surely you jest, Your Highness. The reports claim a simple maintenance worker opened the celestial vault where the greatest champions in the galaxy failed." Tyler stepped forward. "The reports are accurate. The vault was stuck. I unstuck it." Lord Arcturus's eyes narrowed. "You mock us, human. The celestial vault is an architect artifact of immense complexity. It cannot be opened with simple tools." Tyler pulled the can of WD-40 from his pocket and held it up. "This is what I used. Penetrating lubricant. The seam was corroded. I sprayed it, waited 5 minutes, and pulled the door open." The silence in the diplomatic hall was profound. Lord Arcturus stared at the can as if it were a venomous creature. His golden skin flushed darker, almost orange. When he spoke, his voice was tight. "You expect me to believe that a chemical spray defeated a lock that resisted plasma cutters, molecular disruptors, and quantum unsealing arrays?" Princess Alira's voice was cold. "I expect you to believe what happened, Lord Arcturus, because I witnessed it myself. This human succeeded where all others failed, not through force or technology, but through understanding and creativity." Lord Arcturus's mouth worked soundlessly for a moment. Then he said, "The Emperor will be most interested to hear this tale." He had prepared a grand celebration for the champion who freed you, including the traditional offer of your hand in marriage. The princess's expression didn't change, but Tyler saw her hands clench in her robes. Of course he did. Lord Arcturus continued, oblivious or uncaring of the princess's reaction. "Given the circumstances, I suppose the human qualifies, though it pains me to say it. An alliance with Earth would be politically advantageous, if distasteful." Tyler held up a hand. "Wait, hold on. I'm not looking to marry anyone. I just opened a door." Lord Arcturus waved dismissively. "The Emperor's decree is clear. The one who frees the princess shall have her hand in marriage and a position of power within the Empire. It is tradition." Princess Alira's voice cut through the hall like a blade. "And what if I refuse?" Lord Arcturus's expression hardened. "You cannot refuse, Your Highness. You are the Emperor's daughter. Your marriage is a matter of state, not personal preference." The princess took a step forward, and Tyler saw something dangerous flash in her golden eyes. "I have spent 3 cycles locked in a box at my father's whim, Lord Arcturus. I will not spend the rest of my life locked in a marriage for his political convenience." The envoy's skin flushed darker. "You speak of rebellion, princess. That is unwise." Tyler had been watching this exchange with growing discomfort. Now he stepped between them, holding up his hands. "Okay, everyone just calm down. There's no need for rebellion or forced marriages or whatever else. I'm not claiming any reward. I don't want power or a throne or anything like that. I'm happy being a mechanic." Lord Arcturus looked at him with something approaching confusion. "You refuse the Emperor's offer? Do you understand the honor you are rejecting?" Tyler nodded. "I understand it's an honor you're trying to force on me. But I've got a job here, a life I like, and no interest in politics. So thanks, but no thanks." The envoy's confusion deepened. "No one refuses the Emperor." Princess Alira's voice was soft, but carried clearly. "Tyler Grant just did." Lord Arcturus looked between them, his expression cycling through disbelief, anger, and finally settling on cold calculation. "Very well. If the human refuses, then the Emperor's decree stands unfulfilled. Princess Alira must return to the vault until a proper champion frees her." Tyler felt his stomach drop. "That's insane. She's already free." Lord Arcturus shook his head. "She is free only when freed by a champion who claims the reward. If the champion refuses, the test is incomplete." He turned to Princess Alira. "Your Highness, you will return to the vault immediately." The princess's face was calm, but Tyler could see the fury in her eyes. Before she could respond, Tyler said, "No." Everyone turned to look at him. Lord Arcturus's voice was dangerous. "I beg your pardon. Tyler felt his own anger rising, the slow burn that came from seeing injustice and deciding he'd had enough. I said no. The princess isn't going back in that box. That's not happening. Lord Arcturus drew himself up to his full height, which was considerable. You have no authority here, human. The princess is property of the Valerian Empire. That was the wrong thing to say. Tyler took a step forward, close enough that Lord Arcturus had to tilt his head down to meet his eyes. She's not property. She's a person. And I'm not letting you put her back in that vault just because your emperor has control issues. The envoy's hand moved to the ornate weapon at his belt, some kind of energy pistol that probably cost more than Tyler made in a year. You threaten a Valerian noble, mechanic. That is an offense punishable by death. Tyler didn't back down. Then I guess we've got a problem. Before the situation could escalate further, Princess Alira stepped forward and placed a hand on Tyler's shoulder. Her touch was gentle but firm. Tyler, no. This is not your fight. He turned to look at her. Like hell it's not. I didn't free you just so some bureaucrat could lock you up again. Her golden eyes were soft. And I will not allow you to die for me. Lord Arcturus is within his legal rights, no matter how unjust. Tyler opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. She was right. He was a mechanic on a coalition station. He had no legal standing, no authority, no power. He could protest all he wanted, but in the end, the Valerian Empire would do what it wanted. Unless. Tyler turned to Cormac, who had been watching the exchange with his usual inscrutable expression. Administrator, can I ask you a question? Cormac's scales rippled. You may ask, though I make no promises about answering. Tyler said, what are the laws regarding asylum on a coalition station? The diplomatic hall went very quiet. Cormac's four eyes fixed on Tyler with sudden intensity. Any sentient being may request asylum on coalition territory if they have reasonable fear of persecution or unjust treatment in their home territory. Lord Arcturus's voice was sharp. The princess is Valerian royalty. She cannot request asylum from her own empire. Cormac's mandibles clicked. Any sentient being, Lord Arcturus. The coalition does not recognize exceptions based on birth or station. Princess Alira's hand tightened on Tyler's shoulder. He could feel her trembling slightly. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. Then I, Princess Alira of the Valerian Empire, formally request asylum on Meridian 7 Station. I have reasonable fear that my father will continue to use me as a political tool without regard for my well-being or autonomy. Lord Arcturus's skin flushed almost red. This is outrageous. The Emperor will consider this an act of war. Cormac's voice was calm but carried absolute authority. The Emperor may consider it whatever he wishes. Coalition law is clear. The request for asylum has been made and will be processed according to proper procedures. Princess Alira is under coalition protection until her case is resolved. The envoy's hand was still on his weapon. You make a grave mistake, Administrator. The Valerian Empire does not forget such insults. Cormac's scales rippled, and for the first time, Tyler saw something dangerous in the Draxian's expression. Neither does the Galactic Coalition, Lord Arcturus. I suggest you return to your ship and inform the Emperor of the situation. Attempts to remove the princess by force will be met with appropriate defensive measures. For a long moment, Tyler thought Lord Arcturus might actually draw his weapon. The tension in the hall was thick enough to cut. Then the envoy's hand fell away from his belt, and he bowed stiffly. As you wish, Administrator. But know that this matter is far from over. He turned and strode from the hall, his light-woven robes trailing behind him like captured stars. The door sealed behind him with a hiss that sounded almost like a threat. When he was gone, Princess Alira's legs seemed to give out. Tyler caught her before she could fall, supporting her weight as she leaned against him. She was shaking now, really shaking, and he could feel dampness on his shoulder where her face pressed against him. Cormac approached, his voice gentle. Your Highness, I will need to file the formal asylum request. This will require documentation and testimony. Are you certain this is what you want? Princess Alira raised her head, her golden eyes wet but determined. I am certain, Administrator. I will not return to be locked away again. Cormac nodded. Then we will proceed. I should warn you, however, that asylum cases involving royalty are complex. The Emperor will challenge this through every legal channel available. It may be months, possibly years, before this is resolved. The princess straightened, pulling away from Tyler and wiping at her eyes. Then I will wait. I have waited in worse conditions. Tyler found his voice. What happens in the meantime? Where does she stay? Cormac's mandibles clicked in what Tyler had learned to recognize as the Draxian equivalent of a shrug. She will need quarters on the station and some form of employment to justify her presence. Coalition law requires asylum seekers to contribute to station life while their cases are processed. Princess Alira looked around the diplomatic hall, at the repaired walls and cleaned floors. Then she looked at Tyler, and a small smile touched her lips. I suppose I should learn a useful skill. Do you think a mechanic could use an apprentice? Tyler blinked. You want to learn maintenance work? Her smile widened. Why not? You freed me with a spray can and ingenuity. Perhaps you could teach me to do the same. Tyler looked at Cormac, who was making a sound that might have been laughter. The administrator said, I see no reason why not. The station can always use additional maintenance personnel. Consider it approved. And that was how Princess Alira of the Valerian Empire became a mechanic's apprentice. The next few weeks were the strangest of Tyler's life, and he'd once spent a month fixing life support on a mining station populated entirely by methane-breathing rock eaters who communicated through controlled explosions. Princess Alira was a dedicated student, if completely unprepared for manual labor. The first time Tyler handed her a wrench, she held it like it might explode. The first time he asked her to crawl into a maintenance shaft, she'd stared at the narrow opening with barely concealed horror. And the first time she actually got grease on her luminescent skin, she'd looked at her hands for a full minute in shock. But she learned. Slowly, awkwardly, with more questions than Tyler had patience for some days, she learned. He taught her about pipe systems and electrical grids, about the difference between a hydro wrench and a plasma torch, about the 1,000 small tricks that kept a space station functioning. And she absorbed it all with the same intensity she probably once applied to royal etiquette and political maneuvering. They were replacing a coolant pump in the environmental control room when she asked, Do you regret it? Tyler was elbow deep in the pump housing, trying to disconnect a stubborn coupling. Regret what? Princess Alira was holding the spare parts, her royal robes replaced with standard station coveralls that somehow still looked elegant on her. Refusing my father's offer. You could have been royalty. Instead, you are teaching a princess to fix coolant pumps. Tyler grunted as the coupling finally released. Didn't want to be royalty. Wanted to fix coolant pumps. Hand me the sealant. She passed him the tube. But surely you must wonder what your life would have been like. Wealth, power, influence. He applied sealant to the new coupling and fitted it into place. I've met wealthy people, powerful people. Most of them seemed miserable. I'm happy doing this. The princess was quiet for a moment. Then she said softly, So am I. Tyler looked up at her. She was smiling, and there was grease on her face, and her floating hair was tied back in a practical bun, and she looked more genuinely happy than she had in the diplomatic hall wearing star-woven robes. He said, Even covered in coolant fluid and cramped in a maintenance room? Princess Alira nodded. Especially then. Do you know what I did for most of my life, Tyler? I sat in court. I smiled at nobles. I learned 100 different ways to say nothing while sounding diplomatic. I was a decoration, a prize, a chess piece in my father's games. She gestured at the pump, at the room, at her grease-stained hands. This is real. This matters. When we fix this pump, people breathe easier. Literally. Tyler felt something warm in his chest. Yeah, that's exactly it. They finished the repair in comfortable silence, testing the system until the coolant flowed smoothly through the new pump. When they were done, Princess Alira actually cheered, a small sound of genuine triumph that made Tyler grin. As they were cleaning up, Cormac's voice came through the communication system. Mechanic Grant, Princess Alira, please report to my office immediately. They looked at each other. Tyler said, That doesn't sound good. The princess's expression was calm, but he could see tension in the way she held herself. It never does. Cormac's office was a study in controlled chaos, with data pads stacked on every surface and holographic displays showing various station systems. The administrator sat behind his desk, all four eyes focused on a display that disappeared when they entered. He said without preamble, The Emperor has made his move. Princess Alira's voice was steady. What has he done? Cormac's scales rippled with what Tyler now recognized as anger. He has filed a formal complaint with the Coalition High Council, claiming that Meridian 7 is harboring stolen property. He demands your immediate return and threatens economic sanctions against any Coalition world that trades with stations granting you asylum. Tyler felt his anger flare. She's not property. Cormac held up a hand. I agree, Mechanic Grant. However, the Emperor has significant political influence. The High Council is under pressure to resolve this quickly. Princess Alira lifted her chin. What are my options? The administrator's mandibles clicked. You can return voluntarily, which I do not recommend. You can fight the claim through legal channels, which could take years and may ultimately fail. Or you can seek alternative solutions. Tyler asked, what kind of alternative solutions? Cormac looked at them both, his four eyes unreadable. The Emperor's claim rests on the fact that Princess Alira is unmarried and therefore under his legal authority as her father. If she were married, she would be under her spouse's authority instead, and the Emperor's claim would be invalid. The room went very quiet. Princess Alira spoke carefully. You are suggesting a marriage of convenience. Cormac nodded. It is a common solution in such cases. A legal marriage would transfer authority, invalidate the Emperor's claim, and allow you to remain on the station. It need not be a romantic arrangement, merely a legal one. Tyler's mind was racing. And who would she marry? The administrator's gaze fixed on him. That is the question, is it not? It would need to be someone the Emperor cannot easily intimidate or bribe. Someone outside the traditional power structures. Someone who has already demonstrated a willingness to stand against Valerian authority. Tyler realized what Cormac was suggesting. You can't be serious. Princess Alira turned to look at him, her golden eyes wide. Tyler. He held up his hands. I'm a mechanic. I don't know anything about politics or legal marriages or any of this. Cormac's voice was dry. You knew enough to grant asylum to a fleeing princess. You knew enough to defy a Valerian noble. Perhaps you know enough for this as well. Tyler looked at Princess Alira. Really looked at her. She was beautiful and brilliant and utterly out of his league in every way that mattered. She was also terrified, he realized. Behind the calm expression and steady voice, she was scared of being forced back into that life she'd escaped. He said, What do you want, Alira? She blinked at his use of her name without the title. Then she smiled, small and genuine. I want to keep fixing coolant pumps. I want to learn how maintenance shafts work. I want to be free. She paused, then added quietly, and I want to choose my own path, even if that path leads somewhere unexpected. Tyler thought about it. He thought about his simple life, about the complications that would come with marrying a princess, even a princess in exile. He thought about the angry emperor and the political pressure and all the thousand ways this could go wrong. Then he thought about Alira's smile when the coolant pump started working. He thought about the way she listened when he explained things, really listened, like his knowledge mattered. He thought about how she'd gone from a scared prisoner to a determined student, how she'd faced down her own father's envoy, how she'd chosen freedom over comfort. He said, Okay. Princess Alira's eyes widened. Okay. Tyler nodded. Okay. If a legal marriage keeps you free and safe, then okay. We can figure out the rest as we go. Cormac's scales rippled with what might have been approval. Then I will begin the necessary paperwork. Coalition marriages are simple ceremonies, requiring only consent from both parties and 2 witnesses. We can arrange it for tomorrow if you both agree. Princess Alira looked at Tyler, searching his face for something. Whatever she saw there seemed to satisfy her, because she nodded. Tomorrow. Tyler offered his hand, and after a moment, she took it. Her skin was warm, her grip firm. He said, For what it's worth, you're getting a terrible deal. I snore. I'm terrible at remembering important dates, and I spend most of my time covered in grease. She laughed, and the sound filled Cormac's office with unexpected warmth. And you are honest, kind, and you freed me with a spray can when heroes failed with legendary weapons. I think I am getting exactly what I need. The wedding ceremony was held in the same diplomatic hall where Tyler had opened the vault, which seemed fitting in a circular sort of way. Cormac officiated, his formal robes somehow making him look both dignified and uncomfortable. The witnesses were Vex, who had insisted on attending, and Crystalline 7, who claimed it was for historical documentation but seemed genuinely pleased. Tyler wore his cleanest coveralls, which still had a few stains he couldn't quite get out. Princess Alira wore simple robes in silver and blue, beautiful but not ostentatious. Her hair floated around her head in that way it did, and her golden eyes were bright with something that might have been nervousness or excitement or both. Cormac spoke the words required by coalition law, simple phrases about commitment and partnership and mutual respect. Tyler and Alira repeated them, their voices echoing in the mostly empty hall. There was no kiss, no grand gesture, just a moment of quiet understanding as they signed the legal documents that bound them together. When it was done, Cormac said, "I now recognize you as legally married under coalition law. Congratulations." Vex stepped forward and clasped Tyler's hand with all four of his. "You continue to surprise me, human. First you open an impossible lock with a spray can. Now you marry a princess in coveralls. I am beginning to think humans simply do not understand the concept of proper protocol." Tyler grinned. "We understand it. We just don't let it get in the way of doing what needs to be done." Crystalline 7 chimed, her body pulsing with rainbow light. "I must admit, this is the most unusual royal wedding I have ever documented. And I have documented 17 across 4-star systems." Princess Alira, now legally Tyler's wife, smiled. "Good. I have had enough of usual to last several lifetimes." That evening, Tyler and Alira sat in the observation lounge, watching the stars turn. They sat close, but not touching, comfortable in the silence, processing the strange turn their lives had taken. Finally, Alira spoke. "What happens now?" Tyler considered the question. "Well, the waste recycler on Deck 7 is acting up again. I was planning to fix it tomorrow morning. You could come help if you want. It's going to be messy." She looked at him, and he saw surprise and amusement, and something else he couldn't quite identify. "You just married a princess, Tyler Grant, and you were thinking about waste recyclers?" He shrugged. "Someone's got to fix them. And you did say you wanted to keep learning maintenance." Alira began to laugh, that bright, genuine sound that Tyler was beginning to really enjoy. When she composed herself, she said, Yes, I would like to help fix the waste recycler. But Tyler, I need you to understand something." Her expression grew serious, and she turned to face him fully. "This marriage may have begun as a legal convenience, but I do not wish it to remain merely that. I have spent my life in false relationships, political arrangements, calculated alliances. I am tired of pretending." Tyler felt his heart rate increase. "What are you saying?" She reached out and took his hand, her warm skin against his calloused palm. "I am saying that I would like this to become real. Not today, perhaps not for some time, but eventually. I would like to learn about you the way I am learning about maintenance systems. I would like to build something genuine." Tyler looked at their joined hands, then up at her golden eyes. He saw hope there, and vulnerability, and a courage that had nothing to do with facing down emperors or climbing into maintenance shafts. It was the courage to be honest about wanting something, to risk rejection for the chance at connection. He said, "I'd like that too." Her smile was like sunrise. "Then we have an accord. We will fix waste recyclers and learn about each other and see where this unusual path leads us." Tyler squeezed her hand gently. "Sounds good to me. But for the record, I meant what I said. I really do snore." Alira laughed again. "And I sometimes glow in my sleep, apparently. We will adapt." 2 months later, the High Council formally rejected the Emperor's claim. The marriage was legal, the asylum request was moot, and Princess Alira was recognized as a free citizen of the Galactic Coalition with full rights and protections. The Emperor's response was predictably furious, including threats of economic sanctions and formal diplomatic protests. None of it mattered to Tyler and Alira. They were too busy fixing the environmental systems on Deck 12. Tyler was teaching Alira how to calibrate an atmospheric sensor when she suddenly said, "I love you." He nearly dropped the calibration tool. They'd grown close over the past months, spending nearly every day together, learning each other's quirks and habits and histories. But they hadn't said those words yet, both dancing around the edges of the feeling without quite naming it. He said, "Yeah?" She nodded, her luminescent skin glowing slightly brighter in the dim maintenance shaft. "Yes, I love that you see problems instead of mysteries. I love that you treat everyone the same regardless of their title or status. I love that you taught me to fix things with my own hands." I love that you freed me, not because you wanted something from me, but because you saw someone who needed help." She paused, then added quietly, "I love you, Tyler Grant. I thought you should know." Tyler set down the calibration tool carefully. Then he pulled her close, feeling her warmth against him, smelling the faint scent of cleaning solvent and the floral undertone that was uniquely her. "I love you too, Alira. I love your determination and your laughter and the way you get excited when we fix something complicated. I love that you chose freedom over comfort. I love that you're not afraid to get your hands dirty." He pulled back just enough to see her face. "I love that you're my wife, and I love that we're building something real together." She kissed him then, her lips soft against his, and the atmospheric sensor beeped to indicate it needed calibration, and neither of them cared. Later, when they emerged from the maintenance shaft holding hands and covered in dust, they found Cormac waiting with a datapad. The administrator's scales rippled with barely suppressed amusement. "I have a message from the Emperor. He has formally disowned Princess Alira and declared her dead to the Valerian Empire." Alira's expression didn't change. "So I am truly free." Cormac nodded. "Legally, politically, and in every way that matters. You are no longer a princess. You are simply Alira Grant, maintenance technician second class." Tyler saw the smile spread across his wife's face, bright and genuine and full of joy. She said, "Good. Being a princess was exhausting. Being a mechanic is much more satisfying." Vex appeared from around a corner, his 4 arms carrying what looked like bottles of something that glowed faintly. "I heard the news. This calls for celebration. I have brought Keltharian spirit wine." Crystalline 7 floated after him, her body pulsing with excited light. "And I have brought documentation equipment. This moment must be recorded for posterity." The day a princess became a mechanic. That evening, in the observation lounge with stars scattered across the darkness and friends gathered close, Tyler and Alira celebrated their freedom and their love and the strange path that had brought them together. Vex told stories of his combat training that always seemed to end in humorous failure. Crystalline 7 shared knowledge from 17 different cultures. Cormac even relaxed enough to tell a joke, though the translation didn't quite work and everyone laughed anyway. At one point, Tyler stepped away to the window, looking out at the universe. Alira joined him, slipping her hand into his. She said, "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had not opened that vault?" Tyler thought about it. "Sometimes. But then I remember that I did open it, and I got you, and I wouldn't change that for anything." Alira leaned her head against his shoulder. "You freed me with WD-40 and patience. You gave me a life I chose for myself. You taught me that fixing broken things is more valuable than ruling empires." She squeezed his hand. "Thank you, Tyler, for all of it." He kissed the top of her head, feeling her hair float against his face. "Thank you for choosing to stay, for choosing this life, for choosing me." They stood like that for a while, watching the stars turn, surrounded by friends, building a future one fixed problem at a time. And somewhere in Tyler's tool bag, wedged between a hydro wrench and a portable scanner, a blue and yellow can of WD-40 waited patiently for the next impossible problem that would surrender to human ingenuity and a little bit of lubricant. Because sometimes the simplest solution really is the right one. Sometimes a door is just a door that needs oil. And sometimes the person who can see that, who can look past the legends and the complexity and the intimidating reputation to find the simple truth underneath, that person can change everything. Tyler Grant was just a mechanic. He fixed things that were broken, solved problems that seemed impossible, and approached the universe with honesty and determination. He didn't have legendary weapons or advanced training or noble blood. He had a spray can, a willingness to try, and a belief that most problems, no matter how complicated they seemed, usually had simple solutions if you looked at them the right way. And in the end, that was enough to free a princess, defy an emperor, and build a love that would last longer than any dynasty. 6 months after the wedding, Tyler was called to fix a malfunctioning cargo door on the station's main docking bay. Alira came with him, as she always did now, carrying the tool bag and asking questions about pneumatic systems. They were halfway through the repair when a ship docked, sleek and expensive, bearing the markings of the Valerian Empire. Tyler and Alira exchanged glances. She said, "Should we be concerned?" Before Tyler could answer, a figure emerged from the ship. She looked similar to Alira, with the same luminescent skin and golden eyes, though her hair was a different color, deep red instead of purple. She wore traveling clothes rather than royal robes, and she carried a single bag. She approached them cautiously, her eyes fixed on Alira. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "Sister." Alira's hands tightened on the tool bag. "Lyanna, what are you doing here?" The newcomer, Princess Lyanna apparently, gestured at the ship behind her. "Father locked me in the celestial vault. 3 cycles, just like you. He sent 47 champions this time. None of them could open it." She paused, then added with a small smile, "So I escaped through the maintenance access panel in the back." Tyler blinked. "There's a maintenance access panel?" Lyanna nodded. The architects were practical. They built a service entrance for repairs. It was concealed but not locked. "I found it after 2 days of searching." Her smile widened. "Father is furious. I heard what you did, sister. How you found freedom here. I thought perhaps there might be room for one more runaway princess." Alira was quiet for a long moment. Then she stepped forward and embraced her sister, the tool bag forgotten on the deck. "There is always room for family. Welcome to Meridian 7. Lyanna returned the embrace, and when they pulled apart, Tyler saw tears on both their faces. The red-haired princess looked at him. "You must be the famous mechanic who freed my sister with a spray can." Tyler shrugged. "I just opened a stuck door." Lyanna laughed. "Father thinks you're some kind of evil genius who corrupted Alira with human magic. He has forbidden your name to be spoken in the palace." Tyler grinned. "Good. I prefer being forgotten by emperors." Alira took her sister's hand. "Come, I will show you your quarters and introduce you to the administrator. And perhaps, if you are interested, I can teach you about maintenance systems. It turns out fixing things is far more rewarding than courtly politics." As the 3 of them walked through the station, Lyanna said, "You really are happy here, are you not? Happy being a mechanic's wife instead of a princess?" Alira looked at Tyler, her golden eyes warm. "I am happy being a mechanic myself. The wife part is just a wonderful bonus." Tyler felt his heart swell. He took Alira's free hand. The 3 of them connected now, walking toward whatever came next. Behind them, forgotten in the docking bay, the cargo door hung half-repaired. Tyler would finish it later, after helping his sister-in-law settle in, after showing her around the station, after introducing her to the simple satisfaction of making things work. Because that's what mechanics did. They fixed broken things. They solved impossible problems. They looked at situations everyone else said were hopeless and found a way forward. And sometimes, if they were very lucky, they built families and futures from spray cans and stubbornness and the absolute certainty that most problems, no matter how complicated, could be solved with the right tools and enough patience. The Valerian Empire would continue to exist, powerful and influential across the galaxy. Emperor Corvus would continue to scheme and manipulate and play his political games. But he had lost 2 daughters to something he could never understand. The simple human belief that freedom and honest work and chosen family mattered more than power and prestige and ancient tradition. Tyler Grant had opened a vault with WD-40. In doing so, he had freed a princess, found a wife, gained a sister-in-law, and demonstrated once again that humanity's greatest strength was not in legendary weapons or advanced technology, but in the ability to see past complexity to the simple solutions that had been there all along. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug and see you in the next story.